Another reason why I see the supernatural fingerprints all over the Bible is through fulfilled prophecies. Right? Fulfilled prophecies like the book of Daniel, where Daniel predicts the rise and the fall of the Persian Empire and the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire with such detail that a lot of scholars say that just couldn't have been written by Daniel. No, or it was written by Daniel and he was inspired by God, and so he knew the future. God told him the future. Right? The 300 prophecies that Jesus came to fulfill. And now I'll admit as a skeptic, like there are some prophecies I'm like, okay, Jesus probably just fulfilled that because he read Zechariah and he read that the Messiah was going to ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. So it's like, okay, I'll kind of get rid of that one. But all the ones that he had no control over, like where he was going to be born, like the prophet Micah saying the Messiah was going to be born in Bethlehem. Okay, he couldn't control that he was going to be born in Bethlehem. He couldn't control that Judas would betray him for 30 pieces of silver. He couldn't control what the guards were going to do with his clothing when they cast lots for his clothing. That was predicted. Right? He couldn't control that he was going to be born of a virgin, predicted by Isaiah. Right? He couldn't control, well, maybe I guess he could control, but God, the Father, brought him back from the dead, but he predicted his own death, burial, and resurrection. With David kind of says it's going to happen when he says that, God, you're not going to let your Holy One see decay. There's all these prophecies in the Old Testament that Jesus came to fulfill, and he fulfilled them. That's why I see supernatural fingerprints all over the Bible. Now, again, sometimes as a skeptic, I say, but how do we know, Sean? How do we know that it wasn't the new Christians that went back in the Old Testament, maybe kind of put those prophecies in there to make it look like Jesus fulfilled them? Well, that argument might hold water until 1947. Until 1947, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And one day, a Bedouin shepherd is throwing rocks in some caves by the Dead Sea, and all of a sudden he hears a crashing noise. He goes and he looks into this cave, and he finds that he has found a cache of old manuscripts. Scholars eventually get these manuscripts in their hands, and they realize these are documents of the Old Testament. And they find every single book of the Old Testament, at least a piece of every single book in the Old Testament, except for Nehemiah and Esther. And they got the whole book of Isaiah. And you know what? When they open up the book of Isaiah, the same book of Isaiah that was written 200 years before Jesus, because that's what they date these scrolls back to, 200 years before Jesus. The same Isaiah that was written, that was copied, that was being read 200 years before Jesus, is the same Isaiah that we have in our Bible today.